Today's my first vlog post major equipment malfunction, but the equipment malfunction actually can be something creative. I have some ideas for What the Fuck Wednesdays and my next choreographed dance. We'll continue with some hyperinflation banknotes from around the world. Set 2. We're starting to recognize these repeat offenders. This man looks like he's been at the hand of a number of hyperinflation situations. Poland. Poland was one of the countries I would have knocked out earlier in the year, sans pandemic. I had two paths given my free ticket in to Turkey. One was east and one was west. The eastern path, Trump eliminated by assassinating a major figure in Iran. Was in early January, but west through the rest of Eastern Europe looked to be okay until the global pandemic wiped all travel off the map. Okay, we've been here before. Yugoslavia is a repeat offender. And last time, I refrained from naming all of the countries that make up Yugoslavia. But I since came upon an article that listed them all again, and I think with such a recent reading, I can now confidently state all of those countries, which are 6 in total. So, Serbia, Bosnia, Croatia, Montenegro, Macedonia or North Macedonia, and Slovenia. Do I have that right? I hope so. Otherwise, that's just an indictment of my memory. I wish that I could recall instantaneously things that I've learned abroad, because I'd have quite a catalog of knowledge that way. But as most people, I suffer from memory loss, especially this year 2020, where we all want it to wipe away. Eastern Europe is well represented in hyperinflation notes. To remind again, hyperinflation is when a bill with many nils is worth relatively little. The example that I often circle back towards is Zimbabwe. Zimbabwe has the dubious distinction of having the most number of zeros in the world on a banknote. 100 trillion at the time of collapse 2009. 100 trillion was worth only 40 US cents. Eastern Europe is really well represented. Latvia is another country that I would have included. Off of memory, the ones I'm missing are what was it? Romania, Moldova, Belarus, Ukraine, Latvia, Lithuania, and Poland. So that's 7. Now, why I decided that western route from Turkey would be much easier than the eastern route through Iran and the stands is because I was planning to do all of Eastern Europe self-guided by myself. And that's something that I can easily do just landing in that area of the world. The stands, in contrast, have some annoying visas that are harder to do on your own and most likely would require a tourist company intervention. I'm willing to do that when necessary, but For whatever reason, for the first time on that trip, I wanted only the outward flight because it was free. The rest I wanted to just create as time went on, and that actually proved to be the best thing during a pandemic, because then I had nothing to stop me from up and leaving Turkey at the time, which was the country that I had been traveling in March. I'll be real with you, some of these bills are actually very small on the hands. For example, this Nicaragua bill is the smallest banknote I've ever held in my hands. I'm actually surprised they make one so small. As I explained in a previous video, I've been to Yugoslavia's current countries, and also Nicaragua. Nicaragua is one of my favorites. I've recounted a story of volcano boarding down the side of a sometimes active volcano. The smoky ash that you breathe in and out, and the wind whipping by your head are surely worth that experience. But another thing that was interesting was that I actually had to arrange myself to leave the establishment that I was staying at. That was part of a tour where I went off tour by myself, but in doing so I had to organize a horse transportation across an otherwise shallow river, but a river that can soak you if you try to walk across. So horse is the only transportation across that river, and that's the only way out of the establishment that actually hosts sea turtles most other months of the day. But around the time that I was in there, sea turtles were taking a rest from their beach berths. But I did come across many a local who sell those turtle eggs. They look really interesting. Multiple sizes, and actually a lot bigger than I imagined. But that same trip, I interacted with fully grown turtles, so that made up for it. It's a thing with adventure traveling, especially if you're traveling for months at a time. You only can accommodate so much. So, observing wild turtle hatchlings on a beach is something that I'm still looking forward to in the future. Maybe I'll do it somewhere else in South America. I also mentioned that I'm leaving the rest of South America to one big circuit, or at least that was my plan pre-pandemic. The ones that I have left are Ecuador, Peru, Bolivia, Paraguay, Brazil, and Venezuela. I've done top and bottom of South America, so I've left the middle. Venezuela's been in the news quite a lot, but I have a couple of adventure traveler friends who've traveled safely through Venezuela, mostly by guided tour. Angel Falls is one of the highlights of this country of Venezuela. I actually considered crossing by boat to Isla Margarita or another tip of Venezuela from Trinidad and Tobago, because actually that's one of the cheaper ways to enter that area. I settled on Guyana and Suriname because those two countries are actually very expensive to travel to through South America. So I decided through Trinidad was the best. That was actually a last minute decision. And the tightest travel decision I've ever made, by far. I booked those flights on one day at 6 p.m. and they were flying at 9 p.m. that same day. Is that something I'd ever do again? Yes. For good deals, I'd do that. And that's why I'm actually mourning the loss of a travel world that I had known from before. Because all of that daring stuff might be possible, but might also be problematic given the lack of supply now. This is an interesting British Armed Forces. I'll show this once, and then I'll look at the legend, because I have a guess as to what this actually is. Unless it says right on the piece. My guess is this is actually Hong Kong currency, because I've noticed that Hong Kong currency is part of this collection. Okay. I'll show it twice and then verify on the legend here. Oh. Heh. No. It's actually Great Britain. Great Britain, for some reason, had its own hyperinflation bill situation, and that bill I just showed, the 5 pence, is somehow considered a hyperinflation bill. I'll leave that to be a research question for all of you aficionados out there. Yep, that was just from Great Britain, Great Britain. That's hilarious, actually. Okay. Honestly, the size of some of these makes me think it's like Monopoly money. I just commented on the size of Nicaragua's bill. This is even smaller than the bill that I just commented is the smallest bill that I've ever held. This is the smallest bill I've ever held. This bill from China. It's insane, to be quite honest, how small it is. I wonder if this is true of all Chinese currency, but there's actually some different lettering other than Chinese, which I find crazy. Maybe that's ancient Chinese lettering. I've outed myself because my many years of Chinese school have obviously been flushed to waste. Although, to be fair to me, we rarely learn the evolution of the characters. We just learn what's called traditional Chinese. That Chinese has been further simplified into simplified Chinese, but that's usually the extent of your cursory learning, even in many years of Chinese school. They concentrate on functional practical Chinese instead of ancient scripts. I mean, that's really wild, to be quite honest. I mean, the reason why is because to the left, that looks partially Arabic. The rest of this could be ancient. But, I mean, really. Who knows sometimes? It is what it is what it is. I'm just shocked at the size. How small is this? That's how close I'm bringing it to the lens, is how small it is. How can I compare in a way that makes sense? Okay. Well, just trust me, it's small. Some interesting Indonesian currency. Again, really small. I'm slightly confused, but what can I say? I'm just shocked at how small some of this currency is. The pandemics have plunged me into some interesting controversies regarding world records or feats of note that have been called into question. I find this interesting because I myself have considered aiming for some world records myself. The obvious one would be to have my 193 UN country achievement certified by Guinness if and when I complete that. And part of the problem is that Guinness actually requires 10,000 pieces of evidence. So 10,000 pieces, 200 countries, is 50 pieces of evidence per country. Have I done that right? 200 roughly times 50. 1, 2, 3 zeros plus 2 times 5. I think so, yes. I think I've done that right. I mean, 50 pieces of evidence per country. That's crazy, especially for some of the smaller countries, and especially ones that rarely speak English. From the stories that I've heard of other people certifying their travel to all countries of the world, including the number of women who've had the speed record. Sometimes they've had to ask locals to sign witness statements. Ha, good luck having a local sign some random document in English. Or good luck spending all the time to have a certified translated copy. At that point, it's a lot of work, and I'd prefer to spend my time actually having fun in those countries. So you'll just have to take my word that I've been where I've been. This is the Hong Kong note I was actually talking about. 1 cent. What is this? I'm just curious how this is an hyperinflation note. But maybe I'm confused, who knows anymore. It's actually blank on the back. It's actually really funny. I've never seen currency this small before. We have one more bill left, and that's actually the end of this set as well. Nepal. Does Nepal show Mount Everest? I'm sure that's probably it. Before I began solo backpacking, my first trip was actually going to be a trip that included Nepal and Everest Base Camp. I then completely changed my idea, and I'm reconsidering whether base camp is something I aim for at all. And this was way before the pandemic. Again, I've added a goal of traveling to outer space, so the adventure travel, assuming that it comes back in a form that's doable after the pandemic, we'll have to take some concessions on that.